This video is sponsored by Skillshare. If you're looking for more productivity tips after watching this video, check out my friend Thomas Frank's Productivity Masterclass by signing up at the link in the description. Today we are talking about time management for grad students, and while I believe that there are many time management apps that claim to use artificial intelligence, I don't use any of those, so this is actually going to be a bit more of a meta topic because some of you asked me how I balance my time between YouTube, doing a PhD, and all of the other extracurriculars that I do that a lot of you don't know about. Ironically, this video is also coming out the week that I am scheduled to move into a new apartment, so I am anticipating that I did not manage my time well enough to do a full, thoroughly researched video for this week. I'm going to be going through my process for scheduling out an average week so that I manage my time well, as well as touching on 5 time management tips for anyone who's a grad student looking to manage their time better. Hopefully this will be useful for those of you who are considering applying to PhD programs or are currently PhD students or just want to manage your extracurricular activities better or want to get a glimpse at what a week in my life usually looks like. Also, if you're new here, I'm Jordan and I'm a PhD student who's fascinated by all of the ways that we interact with AI and algorithms on a daily basis, so consider subscribing if you want to keep learning with me. So to show you how I manage my time, I'm going to plan out an ideal week in my life going through my 5 main commitments. Keep in mind that this is a week in quarantine, so things look a little bit different than they did before quarantine, and will probably continue to look a little bit different as I start going back into lab in the next couple weeks. However, my quarantine schedule isn't actually that dissimilar from my normal one. Things get added to my week in roughly this order, so if I run out of space in my schedule before I get to the end of the list, it means that I either need to reevaluate how much time I assign to each task, or I need to reevaluate the number of commitments that I currently have. I do have a tendency to want to commit to many more things than I can actually do, so every 6 months or so I check in with myself to make sure that I am spending my time in a way that is productive and aligns with my values and these priorities. I have these check-ins about every 6 months, usually in the mid-spring and mid-fall, so that I can make arrangements if I am starting or leaving an organization at the end of the academic or calendar year. So first and foremost, of course, is my PhD work. Before quarantine, my work was about 50% animal work, 50% computational work, but since quarantine started, it shifted to being split 3 ways into animal work, computational work, and device design. And I'm expecting that ratio to stay roughly the same for the next several months. Now, one of the nice things about grad school is that you're not normally beholden to working during normal business hours in terms of when you want to work, although this can depend on your research and your research advisor. I can technically work essentially whenever I want to, but I do have some fixed meetings that I have to attend that total to probably around 5 hours a week. I also have some animal work that can often only be done during the day. Personally, I try to keep the rest of my work within business hours as well, but if you work better early in the morning or late at night and you're still able to keep up with your work, meet with your advisor, and go to any classes or meetings you might have, then go for it. So in an average week, I probably work about 40 hours a week on research, and that can be anything from reading papers to developing new models to learning E&M for a new device. In terms of time management, right now I use Google Calendar to manage most of my meetings, color-coded by what type of event it is because both of my labs also run on Google Calendar. I enter my meetings first, and then once I have scheduled classes, which we'll get to next, I make a list of all of the tasks that I need to do for my research. I try to make this list fairly specific. Instead of something like read some papers, I'll say read 1 paper per day, because it helps me better estimate the amount of time that each task will take. Once I have that list, I will go back to my weekly schedule and figure out where these tasks are going to fit in. I actually do this using an app called TickTick, which I think I discovered through Marques Brownlee's channel, and it's a nice way to color code all of my tasks and move them around if I need to. Plus, it syncs across my phone, my laptop, and my iPad, so no matter where I am, I know exactly what I need to get done that day. With scheduling tasks comes my first time management tip, which is to set reasonable deadlines. This also applies to pretty much all of my work, but when it comes to research in particular, it's not uncommon for me to find myself going down tangentially related rabbit holes or starting tasks that I've never done before and discovering that they take a lot more time than I thought they would. Giving myself a buffer by setting reasonable deadlines that likely overestimate the amount of time that I will need to complete a task helps me stay less stressed and also get all of the things that I need to do done. Personally, I need those deadlines to be external deadlines, something like a meeting with my advisor, a lab presentation, a paper submission deadline or something like that, because I don't tend to abide by my own deadlines, even if I set them. This is one of the fun things that comes with my ADHD. It's a sense of time distortion, where if something isn't happening right now or isn't due right now or tomorrow morning, it might as well be due 10 years from now. So just like you have homework and project due dates for your classes, I work with my advisors to break down projects into smaller tasks and then set reasonable deadlines for them. So once my research is in, I'll start planning out my classes. In reality, managing my time spent on my PhD research and my time spent in classes are actually two things that happen in parallel, because I know when my classes are scheduled when I'm making my weekly plan. So the timing of those courses is taken into consideration when I'm scheduling research meetings or trying to figure out when I can do animal work. In fact, my classes are actually added to a Google Calendar that's run by our lab administrator so that they can make sure not to schedule me for meetings that I have to be at if they conflict with my classes. I'm not taking any classes right now because it's summer, but I will be taking 2 more classes this coming academic year, so those will be in my time management plan in the fall. Similar to scheduling research tasks, I'll make a list of any readings, homeworks, or projects that I need to do, and then I will usually input them into TickTick unless there is some specific time that I have to do them at. You'll notice between Google Calendar and TickTick, I don't usually assign tasks in TickTick to any specific time in Google Calendar. I tend to do that on the morning of, once I have a better feel of what the day is going to be like and if I need to be anywhere if my schedule has changed. With classes comes my second time management tip. Find a way to organize files, notes, and assignments that works for you. Personally, I am notorious for losing pieces of paper, which often results in me running around wasting time trying to either find the original piece of paper or asking a friend for a copy of their notes. Instead, I do everything digitally on my 2016 MacBook Pro and my iPad Pro, which works really well for me. I used to use just my laptop to take notes, and I still think that's a great option if that's what you have available to you, but I personally found that I tend to get a lot more distracted by the other things that are on my laptop, like social media, than I do on my iPad. I use iCloud to store all of my files so that they can be synced across all of my devices. Something like Dropbox or Google Drive might actually work better for you depending on what ecosystem you use, but all of my devices are Apple, so it works for me. I also use OneNote to take the majority of my class notes, as well as to track my PhD projects week by week and take notes during research meetings. So now that I'm done with most of the PhD related things, I start planning for you guys. It might seem strange to you that YouTube is actually third on my list of priorities, but if I ever get around to doing a day in the life video, you'll see that I do most of my YouTube work outside of normal business hours. I started this channel about a month before I started my PhD, so I've never really known a life where I didn't have to balance both. Now, while I do have a calendar for YouTube related things, it's usually not particularly busy because I don't usually have that many YouTube related meetings. However, this does mean that I need a different way to manage my video schedule, general channel to-dos, collabs, and now sponsors, and the best way that I've found to do that is using Notion. Obviously, this video is not sponsored by them, and if you've seen productivity videos from any other standard creator, you've probably heard of them by now. But I really like the way that allows me to manage my channel. In particular, the video tracking is very easy to use. I can sort by when the videos are coming out, although when you guys see this, it will be blurred, as well as by looking at them on a calendar and looking at them by where they are in the production process. So whether or not I finished the script, whether or not I've started filming, etc. My only complaint with Notion is that I don't love writing scripts in it. They have a very modular approach to text, and it can make it a little bit annoying to deal with. I probably spend about 2 to 3 hours a day on my YouTube channel, usually after dinner during the week and then during the day on the weekends. Although I occasionally end up working on a script or editing a video during the day because I'm running late. With YouTube comes my third time management tip, which is to schedule tasks at the times when you are best suited to do them. For example, while I am a morning person, I have found that every video I've ever shot in the morning, I've ended up having to reshoot either because I look and sound tired, I'm stumbling over my words, the lighting is weird because the sun is rising, so it's just not worth it for me to shoot in the morning, and I almost always shoot in the afternoon. On the other hand, I usually like to read papers right after I've worked out and taken my ADHD medication because it's just enough time for my mind to be fresh from the workout. My ADHD meds haven't actually kicked in yet because they usually don't for about an hour, And so it's a nice way to ease myself into the rest of the work that I'm going to be doing that day. So once YouTube is scheduled out, I start looking for the things that I need to do for the MIT Graduate Student Council. Most of you probably don't know this, but I'm the External Affairs Board Chair for the MIT Graduate Student Council, which mostly means that I manage one of the groups that goes and advocates for state, local, and federal policy on behalf of MIT graduate students. This is anything from immigration to science funding to COVID stimulus packages. And because I'm chair, this also means that I'm on the executive committee of the GSC, which often works with MIT administrators to plan or develop projects and new programs. So similarly to classes, I will see what meetings or tasks I have that are relevant to the GSC, and a lot of the time we actually have a calendar that tells me that already. And then I'll see which ones I actually need to add to my calendar. So even though there are some meetings this week, none of them are actually meetings that I need to be at. I'll then draw up that same list of tasks, and once I have the tasks that I need to do for that week, I will go and add them to TickTick under the extracurricular section so I know to get them done and assign them to a day. Most of these things are sending emails or reviewing statements, so stuff that can usually be put into gaps in my schedule. Now, the board has a lot more people on it than just me, which leads to my fourth time management tip: delegate. I was definitely one of those people who complained about having to do group projects growing up, and sometimes it was because I didn't have a great group, but sometimes it was because I couldn't relinquish control over the project itself. However, since college, I've really learned the value of delegating tasks to other people on your team, because first of all, it helps you put your time and effort and energy towards tasks that really deserve and need your attention, but it also opens you up to new ideas or new ways of attacking problems. More practically speaking, if I ran the entire board, I would never sleep, our advocacy would definitely suffer, and I wouldn't be able to keep up with all of the other things that I have to do. So with our first 4 categories satisfied and entered into the schedule and into TickTick and into Notion, we've reached our 5th and last category, which is kind of a catch-all bucket of everything else. I have a lot of other smaller commitments that only often require an hour or two from me a month. For example, I'm on the Cornell Alumni Association as a Class of 2018 chair. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of MIT Science Policy Review. I'm one of the co-organizers of CompSciCon SciWrite, which is a science communication workshop for grad students and postdocs. I play D&D on NatureCheck, and I occasionally write science communication articles on Medium and for Massive Science. I decide whether to take on these commitments on a case-by-case basis based on whether or not I have the time in my schedule to do them. And as you'll see, most of these are actually recurring meetings that are already on my calendar, so things like NatureCheck, and the rest will be added where there's space. As we'll talk about in a second, I really think it's important to block off times for relaxation and fun, so even if there is technically space in my calendar to add something, I may choose not to in favor of taking a day off. So with the catch-all bucket comes my 5th and final piece of advice, which is to only take on one thing at a time. Especially for me, I find it really easy to sign up for a ton of things that I'm interested in the moment, only to later realize that I'm either not actually all that interested or just don't have the time to do it. This ends up bad for me because now I have to figure out how this is going to fit in my schedule if it can, and it also ends up bad for the people that I'm working with because they're also putting in work, and if I can't hold up my end of the bargain, then they need to do more work to cover me. So filling in some of the gaps, here is my finished weekly schedule. All this is usually done on Sunday afternoons, and it takes about an hour. As you can see, I'm definitely not a night owl. I'm usually up at around 5 a.m. and in bed by 9:30, 10. And I also try to leave time in the morning for things like working out. Pre-corona, that meant going to CrossFit or functional fitness or whatever it is we're calling it now. And right now that means going for a run or doing some bodyweight workouts or doing a workout with the 20-pound dumbbells that I have. I also try to get out for a walk in the afternoon since I'm usually home all day, as well as call my parents and my friends and catch up. You can see that I also do some work on the weekends. I try to take Saturdays off every week, both to decompress and also to remind myself that weekends are a thing that exist. And to be clear, each of these weeks is an ideal week, so not everything that's on my calendar or that's on TickTick actually gets done necessarily in a given week. Sometimes things take longer than I expected, or something higher priority comes up and some tasks get moved to the next week. This setup is something that evolved into its current form throughout grad school, because originally I didn't do any of this. I just came in every day and kind of did things, and then would come in the next day and pick up where I left off. And I found that having something like this really helped me manage my time better and waste a lot less time, because I would prepare for things adequately. I would make sure that I did whatever task needed to be done first in order to do the next task the next day. And I wouldn't have to reshoot a video because I shot it at 5 in the morning and then looked at the footage and realized it sucked. So hopefully my process and these tips were helpful to some of you. Let me know in the comments if they were, and gave the rest of you a peek behind the curtain into what a week in my life usually looks like. I'll include links to all of the tools that I mentioned in the description so that you can check them out. In fact, if you don't already have a productivity system set up, a lot of the tools that I mentioned here are also taught in Thomas Frank's productivity course, so if you don't know where to start, I highly recommend Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community for creatives where millions come together to take the next step in their creative journey for less than $10 a month. They offer thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people on topics including illustration, design, photography, video, freelancing, and more. As I mentioned, I'd highly recommend checking out Thomas Frank's productivity course as well as his habit building course, since they're both great ways to develop systems that will make you more efficient for grad school or for whatever else you're trying to do. If you're interested, the first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a 2-month free trial of premium membership so you can explore your creativity. Otherwise, if you want to see more videos on what it's like to be a grad student, you can check out the video that I did on how to do research at the MIT AI lab up here, and you can subscribe to my channel and smash the like button to let me know that you enjoyed this video. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter to get even more of my PhD life, and otherwise we'll be back to our normal tech education content next Friday. Bye!